Hello and welcome to the online lecture series on the course of Object-Oriented Programming. In this video, we'll start chapter number 7, Arrays and Strings. The chapter begins from page number 264. Now in daily life, we have been using this concept since very beginning. Let me give you an example. Like if you go to a superstore or to a shopping mall, then you find different departments or different sections. Like one section would be of grocery, other section would be of garments, and then there would be section for confectionery, and then you find some food court there. Right? So there are different sections are there, the segments are there. There you can find the relevant stuff. Right? Suppose if you want to purchase the vegetables, then you will go to grocery section. If you want to purchase the clothes, then you will go to garment section. And if you want to purchase jewelry or some other stuff, then you will go accordingly into that section. And the same concept is available in mathematics, which is called set. Right? So there's a set theory which basically groups the elements of same type. Like we have a set of whole numbers, set of natural numbers. So the same concept is available in mathematics as well. Now coming to the programming languages, this concept is also available, and the concept or the idea is to group the data items of the same type. And when you group the data items of the same type, and that concept is known as array. Right? So in arrays, basically we group the elements of the same data type. Right? Now the data type of an array can be built-in data type, such as integer and characters and float like, or it can be user-defined data type, such as structures and objects. Now we have covered this concept earlier of structures, in which we also group the data members. But data members in the structure are basically of different data types, such as integer, character and float. But in array, the data members must be of the same nature or the same type. Right? So whenever we group the elements or the members of the same type, then that is known as the array. And if we have the data members of the different types, then we call it as a structure. And there is one more difference between arrays and structure, is that whenever we call any member of a structure, then we call or access by its name. However, whenever we access any element of an array, then we access it by its index number. So in array we have an index number of every element, right? And however, in structure we have a name, a specific name for every single data member. So this is the difference between structure and an array. Now the same concept is also available in C++ with different name, and that is known as vectors. And vectors is another technique by which we can group the data elements of the same type. And this concept is covered in chapter 15, Standard Template Library. So if you really want to have an extended understanding of vectors, then you may read the chapter 15 to know how we can use vectors in C++. Let's talk about array in much more detail. And as I mentioned to you, that array are basically a way in C++ or in other programming languages to group the data elements of the same type. Now to demonstrate this concept, I have an example which is on page number 264 of the textbook. So let me explain to you the program first, and then we'll discuss about the syntax and defining an array and accessing the member elements of an array. So we'll cover all those concepts in detail. Right here is the basic program to explain you or to demonstrate you the concept of an array. And starting from the libraries here, in the main program we have defined an array here, right? So this syntax is basically the syntax of defining an array. And the way we define a variable is like this way, right? So first we give our data type, and then we give the variable, and then we initialize it with a value, or we take the value from the user. But this variable can only handle or can only store one value at a one time. But right here we have a variable which can store 4 values of integer in nature. And because this is grouping 4 different elements of the same type, and therefore this is known as the array here, right? So this is how we basically define an array. So first we need to write the data type, and then we need to give the name to an array, and then we write the index of an array in the square brackets, and this 4 is called index of array. That means this array can maximum stores 4 elements. and then we have a for loop here, and the for loop basically starts with 0, and the maximum value of this for loop is less than 4, that means it will go to 3, and from 0 to 3, that means totally we have 4 numbers, and then there is an increment operator here. Right here we have a statement which will be displayed on the console, and it will ask you to enter an age of a person, and whenever we enter an age, that means we'll enter a number, and that number will be stored at J0. That means initially the value of J is 0, therefore the first value that we enter will be stored at index 0, and then again the for loop will perform the increment, that means the value of J will be 1 now. Now whenever we will enter the second value, will be stored at index 1 in the array, and then we'll enter third value and finally fourth value, so accordingly the value will be stored at the respective index in the array. And finally we want to display the value which we have entered, so we will use again the for loop, and initially the J will be 0, that means we will display the 0 index value, and then the value of J will be 1, so we will display the value or the number which is stored at first location. Then the value of J will be 2, that means we will display the value which is stored at second location of an array, and then finally the value will be 3, that means we will display the value which is stored at third location in the array. Now let me run this program here, and if you see, it asks me to enter an age, so let's say first age is 45, and then again it asks me to enter second age, so second age is 78, third age, so let's say 65, and finally let's enter 78. Right? Now we have entered 4 different values for one variable here. So the variable is age, which is basically the name to an array, and so initially the value of J is 0, that means we have stored this 45 at 0 location of the array, and then the value of J is 1 because it performs the increment by the for loop. So the 78 is stored at first location, then 65 is stored at second location, and 78 is stored at third location, and from 0 to 3 means total 4 values we have stored in this array. And likewise we are displaying the value on the output side, we will use the same mechanism, and whatever values are stored at J0, J1, J2 and J3 will be displayed on the output side. And this is how basically we store multiple numbers in a single variable using the concept of an array. Let's talk about syntax of an array, that means how we can define an array in our C++ program. So the first thing that we need to define an array is we need the data type. So this data type can be a built-in and can also be user defined, and then we need to write a variable name, right? So the variable name or the name of the array is in this program is age, and then finally we need the size of array, that means how many elements a single array will be storing or single array will be holding. So in this program the size of array is 4, therefore we mention this 4 here, and this 4 must be mentioned in this square brackets here, so that this remains apart from the other stuff, right? So the first thing we need is data type, like the way we define a variable, and then we need the name of the array, and then we give the size of the array, and the size of the array will always be an integer number no matter what is the data type of this array here, right? So this will always be a real number, and it will be integer in nature, right? And the way we access the elements from an array is we need to give the location or the index of an array element that you want to access. Suppose you want to access the first element, then you need to write the location 0 because array always start with 0. And if you want to access the second member or the element of an array, then you will write 1, and then third and fourth and accordingly, right? So you need to write the location or the index of the array element which you want to access. Now what happens in the memory is that when we define a variable, then according to the nature of the variable or the type of the variable, the memory space is left, or the memory space is made empty by the compiler, right? But when we define an array, the number of locations, the number of consecutive running location in the memory are made empty to store that specific array depends upon the size of the array. Now, if suppose the size of array is 4, that means we need or the compiler will create our empty 4 different consecutive memory location to store that one specific array. Now suppose 8H0, right, that means index 0, we have stored the first number, which is 44, and then the index is 1, we have stored number 16, and then the index is 2, we have stored number 23, and in index 3 we have stored 68. So from 0 to 3 total we have 4 elements, and every single element is stored at the respective memory location, which is being made empty by the compiler, and all the elements will be at consecutive memory location. So H0 at this location, then H1 is at this location, and H2 is at this location, and H3 is at this location. So we'll talk about memory space in the chapter of pointer, and then we will see that in single array, all the elements of a single array are basically stored at consecutive memory location. They are not being scattered, they remain at one space. So we'll discuss about memory spaces in detail in the chapter of pointers. Now, as I mentioned to you that whenever we want to access the elements of an array, we need to give an index number, right? That which exact member you want to access. Now, to demonstrate you this concept, I will explain you one more program which is on page number 267, and then we'll go in much more detail. Right here I have the program, and this program basically takes 6 different numbers, and that numbers basically indicate the sale of a person of 6 different days, and then sum them together and then take the average of the summation, right? So right here on the top we have the libraries, and then we have defined a variable, and the name of the variable is size, and the size is equal to 6 here, right? And because this variable is constant in nature, and that means the value will not get changed, therefore we have mentioned the const keyword here. So this const keyword means this variable size is basically a constant number which is equivalent to 6. Now this variable size basically becomes an index of this array here. So the way we define an array is we need to write the data type. So the data type is double here, and then we write the name of the array, which is sales, and then we give the index of an array. So the index of array is size here, and size is basically equivalent to 6 here. So this is a good way to define an array rather than giving a constant number as an index here, because if this array is being used more than once, then suppose if you want to change the size of array, then you need to go to every single step to change the size of array here. So the good idea is to write the size of array as a separate variable and then use it as an index here. Now right here we have used the for loop to get the 6 values from the user, and those values will be stored at the respective location. Now this for loop basically starts with 0 here, and it goes on till less than 6 because the size is equal to 6 here. So that means from 0 till 5. So we have 6 numbers, and we take all these 6 numbers from the user. Now initially the value of j right here will be 0. That means the first number that we'll enter will be stored at 0 location or at 0 index of the array. Then we'll enter the second number, and that will be stored at the first location in the array. And then we'll enter the second number, third number, fourth and fifth, and those will be stored at the respective location. Now because we want to sum all these numbers, therefore we have defined this total variable here, and which is of double in nature. So initially this total is equivalent to 0, and then we have again used the for loop here to access the values which we have entered right in the array. So initially the value of j would be 0 here, so sales 0. So whatever value is being stored at this location will be summed with the total here. So total is equivalent to 0, so 0 plus whatever the value is stored at this location will be summed together. Then the j will be 1 here, and whatever the value is stored at J1 will be summed with total year. So then two values will be added, and then 3 and 4 and finally 5. And once the summation is being performed, then we want to take the average, and for that reason we need to divide the summation with the size of the array here. So total is the total summation of all the numbers in the array divided by the size of the array will give us the average value. And finally we want to display the average, so hence we have used this double quotation mark here to put the average here, and the value of average will come here. Now let me run this program, and so suppose the first day's sale is equivalent to 1500, second day's sale is, let's say, 1400, and then the third day's sale is, say, 1700, and then 2000, and let's say it's 4000 and 7500. So we have entered 6 values, so 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So this value is stored at 0 location in the array, this value is stored at first location in the array, and then second location, third location, fourth and fifth. And these all values are basically summed by the help of this formula here. And then finally we want to take the average. So for average we need to sum these all numbers and then divide by the maximum size of the array, which is equivalent to 6. And hence we get the average value, which is equal to 3016 and 0.67. Right? So this is how we basically access the elements in the array. Now it's also very possible that rather than taking value from the user, we can initialize the array itself. Right? So we define the array and plus we'll initialize it. So when you initialize any variable or an array, you need to give the values. Right? So this is the format of initializing an array here. So first thing first, what we need is we need to define the array, and to define the array we need the type of the array or the nature of the array, and then we need to write the name of the array and then its maximum locations or the index. So the size of the array is 6 here, and because we want to initialize all these locations, and for that reason we need to assign the values. So at first location we have stored the 1 value, at second location we have stored the 5 value, and then 10, 25, 50 and 100. So first value, second value, third value, fourth value, fifth value and sixth value, and all these values are basically being stored at 6 location in the array here, right? And when we initialize the array by this means, then we need to give the curly brackets here, and within the curly brackets we write all our elements are the members here, and we separate them by the help of comma here. And to make you understand this concept, I'll explain you an example which is on page number 268. Now this program basically demonstrates the concept which I have just explained to you, and the concept is you define the array and plus you initialize the array at the same time, right? And let me give you an overall picture of this program. And this program basically tells us the total number of days till the month and date we'll enter, right? Now on the top we have the libraries here, and then from here our main program starts, and in the main program we have these 3 variables. First variable is month, second variable is the day, and third variable is total days here, right? That means we'll take this value from the user and we'll take this value from the user, and by using this information we'll calculate how many total number of days are there till this point. And these all variables are of integer in nature, and then we have an array here, and the name of the array is days per month, right? And this array is of integer in nature, therefore we have mentioned integer here. And then we need to give the index of the array, and therefore there are 12 months in a year, therefore we have mentioned 12 here. And till this point it is only the definition, right? So this is the definition here. Now if we want to initialize this array, then we need to give the values to these locations here. So in the first month, in the month of January, there are 31 days. In the month of February there are 28 days. In the month of March there are 31 days. In the month of April there are 30 days. In the month of May there are 31 days, in June again 30 days, July 31 days, August 31 days, September 30 days, October 31 days, November 30 days, and December 31 days. That means this array is now being initialized with this value here. Now if you see right here, these all variables are just defined, they are not being initialized. That means there is no value is being given to these variables. But if you see in this array, we have defined the array plus we have initialized them as well. And when you initialize the array, what we need to do is we need to give the two curly brackets here and write the values, and the maximum values will be the size of the array here, and then separate them by the help of comma here. And this statement basically asks you to enter a month. So suppose you enter 4th month and 5th month, so that will be stored in the month variable here. And then it asks you to enter the days, that means suppose 15 days, 16 days. So 4 months and 16 days. So we'll count, we'll sum all these months here. So suppose if we enter 4 months, that means 31 days, 28 days, 31 days and 30 days. These all will be summed together, and plus the additional days we have entered will be summed together, and finally we'll display how many days from the beginning of the year till the point we have entered. And for this reason we have defined this variable here, total underscore days, which basically initially is equivalent to the days we have entered. So this day that we have entered will be stored in this, will be made equivalent to this total days here, and then we'll use the for loop to access these values of the months, right? And then these all values will be summed together with this variable here, and finally we'll display the total number of days on the output side. Right? Now let me run this program, and it asks me to enter a month. So suppose if I enter 5 months here, and then it asks me to enter the number of days, so let's say 15 days. So 5 months and 15 days. So 15 days, this will be stored in day here, and then it is made equivalent to total days here, right? And then total days plus the first month is 31 days, so they will be added together. So 31 plus 15, and then the j will be equivalent to 1, that means 28. Then j will be equivalent to 2 plus 31, j will be equal to 3 plus 30, and j will be equivalent to 4, that means 31. So from 0 to 4 that becomes 5. So hence these all value will be summed together, and plus the additional days we have entered will also sum together and will display as the final number of days from the beginning of the year, right? So 5 months and 15 days are basically equivalent to 135 based on the information we have entered. So if you vary the values from here, then of course the result will vary on the output side, right? That's how we basically can initialize an array with the constant numbers, right? And if this array is of character in nature, then there will be characters here, and if this array is of float in nature, then these values will be float here. If this array is of double in nature, then values will be double here. So far what we have done is we have talked about one-dimensional array only. Like this array right here is basically a one-dimensional array, and it is also very possible that arrays can be of multi-dimensions, right? And those multi-dimensional array are known as higher dimensional array. So you can think of multi-dimensional array as an array of arrays, right? So you have a one array, then you have one more array, then you have one more array, and then you group them together, and that is known as array of arrays, right? Now to explain you this concept, there is an example on page number 270, and I'll explain you the program first, and then we'll talk about this in much more detail. This program basically demonstrates you the concept of multi-dimensional array. That means how we can use multi-dimensional array in C++. Now let me give you an overall picture of this program first, and think of this program as this way, that there's a chain of superstores, and the superstore is in 4 different cities, right, or maybe in 4 different districts. So one superstore is in Karachi, other is in Hyderabad, and one is in Lahore, and one is in Islamabad. And the owner of the superstore wants to know the income of 3 months of each single store, right? Now let's suppose we want to know the income of Islamabad Superstore for 3 months, then that become a one array. And suppose we want to know the income of Lahore Superstore, then again that become an array. So these all arrays group together and makes one more array, and that is known as an array of arrays, right? Now to explain you this concept, we have this program here, and on the top we have the libraries and manipulator, and then using namespace std, and we have defined these two variables here which are both constant in nature and of integer type. So total number of districts are equal to 4. That means there are 4 different superstores in 4 different cities or in 4 different regions. And the months equal to 3. That means we want to calculate the income for 3 months of every single store, right? Now these both variables will be used as an index of an array which we will be using in our main program, right? Now they become like global variables here. That means they can be used by any program right here, or maybe any function in the program here. And within the main program we have these two variables, which is D and M. So D defines the districts and M define the months here, right? And they will be used in our loop, right, to perform the increment for the districts and for the months as well. Now we have defined the array here, right? So this array is of double in nature, and then the name of the array is sales, right? And we want to know the information for all 4 regions, or for all 4 superstores in 4 different regions or districts and cities, whatever you prefer. And so the districts would be 4 here, and again months would be equal to 3. Now think of this as the sales is an array which is of districts, and districts is also an array of months here, and now this collectively becomes an array of arrays, right? So if you expunge months for a while from here, right? So if I expunge month for a while from here, then this sales is an array of districts, right? That means there are 4 districts, and hence the size of sale becomes 4. Now if I put this months back here, then every single district is an array of this month here. So district 1 has 3 months, again district 2 has information of 3 months, district 3 has information again of 3 months, and district 4 has information of again of 3 months, and that becomes an array of arrays. So this array is the size of 4, and this array has basically 4 elements, 3 elements in each single array here, right? And then we have this statement here, cout indel. That means we want to keep the 2 lines empty here. And now from here we have a for loop which is being used for the districts, and then we have a for loop for the months here. So this for loop basically starts with 0, and the districts is equivalent to 4, and that means we'll go from 0 till 3, and that becomes 4. And then we have a for loop for the months here, that again months equal to 3. That means from 0 to 2 become 3 here. So first we'll calculate we'll collect the information for the first district for 3 months, right? And then again this D will be increased, will become 1 year. So we'll collect information for the first region again for 3 months, then D become 2. So we again collect the information again for 3 months, and finally D become 3 here, and again we'll take the information for the 3 months here, and this information will be stored at respective arrays here at D and M here. Now D plus 1 and M plus 1 simply means initially the D is 0, so 0 plus 1 is 1, and this is again 0 plus 1 is 1. So that means we want to have the information for the first district for the first month, and then again for the first district and second month, first district and then a third month, and likewise it goes on. And right here this segment basically is left to display the information that we have taken from the user. So we have left these 2 lines here, and in this line we have left this space and then we have a month here. So again there are 3 months, 1 month, 2 months and 3 months. And then again we have a for loop here. This for loop will run 0 till 3, that means 4 times, and will display the values on the output side. Now we have for loop here, right? This for loop is for the districts, and then this for loop is for the months. And initially the value for this district would be 0. That means we want to display the information of the first district. So 0 plus 1 equal to 1, and the first district has contains 3 month information. So this loop will run for 3 times. This for will run for 3 times, and again then the value for d will increase, and then the d becomes 2 here. That means we want to display the 3 months information for the second district, and then again we'll display the information for the third district for 3 months, and finally we'll display the information for the fourth district for 3 months here. And this structure right here that we are using, this composition that we are using here, it contains the IOS flags, right? So these IOS flags are basically the manipulators which basically helps us in displaying the floating point numbers, right? Now this IOS fixed helps us in displaying the constant numbers. Suppose we have numbers 12.45. Now 12 is a constant number, right? Is a whole number, and so that means this fixed helps us in displaying that whole number. And then show point helps us in putting dot there. So 12 point, so this point is being done by this show point here. And then set precision is a function of basically the manipulator library, and it basically defines how many numbers you want to display after the decimal point. Suppose you want to display 3 numbers or 2 numbers after decimal point, then you write the 2 here. And so 12.45, so 12 is a constant number, is a whole number, so we have mentioned the fixed here. Then there is a point, so therefore we have mentioned show point here. And then we want to display the 2 numbers or 2 digits, I would say, after decimal, so therefore we have set the precision of 2 here. And then we have a set width of 10, that means we want to have a field or the space of empty space of 10 blanks here, and then we want to display the number on the output side that we have taken from the user. So this whole setup is just to display the information on the console in a proper way. Now let me run this program, and so it asks me to enter the information for the first district and for the first month. So 12. Now first district and second month, I'm just giving an arbitrary number, so 45. Then first district and third month, and say 17 here. Now we have a second district and again first month, so let's say 15. Second district and second month, so let's say 17. And second district and third month, let's say 18 here. Now third district and first month, so number say 16. And third district and second month, so number say again 16. And third district and third month, so let's say number is 17. Right? Now we have fourth district, is for fourth district and first month, so let's say number is 123. And then fourth district and second month, say 158. And fourth district and third month is 147. Now I have entered this information for the first district 3 months, second district 3 months, third district 3 months, and fourth district and 3 months here. So this is the first array which contains these 3 elements, second array which contains these 3 elements, third array which contains these 3 elements, and finally fourth array which contains these 3 elements. Right? So this is exactly how this works, this segment works here. So this becomes an array of arrays, right? So 4 district and 3 months here. And this setup that we have left here, so these lines which we have made empty are being done by these lines here. Then this line basically displays the months, so we have month here. And then this line displays 1, 2, 3, so we have 3 months here, 1, 2, 3 here. and then these iOS flags basically helps us in displaying this information. So this fixed part is being done, this fixed part in this number is being done by this iOS flag, and then show point, which is this dot here, is being done by this statement here, and then set precision is 2, that means maximum we can put the 2 digits after this dot here. Set width is a manipulator having the field of 10, that means from here to here we have 10 space being left to put this information here. And finally we want to display the information what we have taken from the user, that is being done right here. So that's how basically the multi-dimensional array works. Now the way we define and access the multi-dimensional array is very simple. So as I mentioned to you, the first thing you need to write is the data type, and then the name of the array, right, and then the first dimension of the array, and then the second dimension of the array, right. So these both can be equal, and they both can also be different numbers. It's also very possible. So in our program the size of districts were 4 and the months were 3. That means we want to collect the information for 4 different regions and for 3 months. And it's also possible that we can have 3 dimensions, so like x dimension, y dimension and z dimensions. So this dimension becomes an array of x, and this array becomes an array of y, and this array becomes an array of z here. And it basically looks like a checkerboard here. Checkerboard is like in a square shaped box here. So district 1 has this 3-month information, district 2 will have this 3-month information, district 3 will have this information here, and district 4 will have this information here, right. So cells 0 will, that means at cell 0 index will contain this information, cell 1 index will contain this information, cell 2 index will contain this information here, and cell 3 index will contain this information here. Now if we look in 2-dimensional way, then cell 0, 0, that means we are accessing this information here, cell 0, 1, that means we are accessing this information, cell 02, that means we are accessing this information here, right. So it becomes like a matrix. So if you studied matrix in mathematics, then matrix are basically the 2-dimensional arrays, and that becomes same concept here. So we have a rows and columns. So first indicates number of rows and second indicates the number of columns, right. So the same information is being used here. Now let's talk about the formatting of numbers, which is being done in this segment here by the help of iOS flags, and for this reason we have used this library of IO manipulator here. And the iOS flags are basically used to format such floating numbers. So suppose 70.45, 80.999 here. Now these numbers can be displayed much more properly by the help of iOS flags, right. So to perform the formatting of numbers and display them in alignment, right, so if you see the output of this program, then you get a proper checkerboard kind of display, and for this thing we basically use the iOS flags. And we've talked about the set width manipulator in much more detail earlier, which defines a specific width of whatever size you prefer. And this whole concept basically helps us in displaying the floating point numbers in a defined width, right. Now iOS is basically a class, right, and that class contains the manipulators, right, and those manipulators basically contain the flags here, right. So this set iOS flag is basically a manipulator, right, and this manipulator belongs to the iOS class. And so what we need here, we need to write the name of the class first as an argument, and then which flag you want to use. Suppose you want to use fixed flag, that means this will only display the fixed numbers, that means whole numbers. It will not display the exponential numbers or any other kind of numbers. Then again, set iOS flags is a manipulator, and what this manipulator takes, it takes argument, and in argument we need to write the name of the class, which is iOS, and then we'll write the scope resolution operator, and then we'll write the flag here. This show point flag basically put the dot there, like 12.45, so point can be displayed by the help of show point here. And then set precision is a function of this iOS class, and this takes this argument, which is how many numbers or how many digits you want to display after decimal point. So suppose you want to display 2 digits, then you write 2 here, and we have to define a specific field to display those numbers. So suppose if we define the field of 10, then we need to use the set width manipulator to put that decimal numbers into that segment here. And finally we write this data that we have taken from the user, so to display them properly here. So this is how we basically use the iOS class, which contains manipulators such as set iOS flags, set precision, set width. These are all the manipulators, and every single manipulator has its own arguments. So set iOS flags carries these arguments, and set precision carries this argument here, set width carries this argument here, and every single manipulator has different argument and has different information within it. Now it's also very possible that we define the multi-dimensional array and initialize at the same time, right? So if you see right here, the array is being defined and it is being initialized at the same time. So the way we initialize a multi-dimensional array is, right, we write one array in curly brackets, then one more array in curly brackets, and now this array becomes like a single element, and this array is also become like a second and one more element, and then this array becomes one element here, and this array becomes one element here. And as you know, all the elements in the array need to be separated by comma, so therefore we have given the comma here. Now collectively this whole becomes an array of an arrays. So we have bunch of arrays here, and that becomes collectively one array here. So we have to again give curly brackets and give semicolon to accommodate all these arrays into one array, and therefore we call this as a multi-dimensional array. Now to demonstrate you this concept of defining and initializing a multi-dimensional array at the same time, and there is an example in the textbook on page number 273. Let me explain and demonstrate you this concept. Now this program is very similar to the program that I have explained to you earlier for the superstore in 4 different regions and collecting the information for the 3 different months. But in that we have taken the value from the users and for 4 different regions for 3 months. But in this program we are initializing our array at the same time when we are defining the array, right? So this program is very similar to that program, and right here we have the defining segment of the array. So at this point we have defined the array, right, and then we have given the equals to symbol to initialize the array elements here, right? So now we have 4 districts, so first district, second, third and fourth. So we have 4 districts here, and then we have information for 3 months, first, second and third. That means this cell is an array having the size of 4, and this district is basically a group of arrays, and every single array will contain the 3 elements. So if you see, the first district contains the 3 elements, second district contains again 3 elements, third district contains 3 elements, and fourth district contain the 3 elements here. Now because every single district is an array, therefore it is being placed in curly brackets here, and hence they are being separated by a comma here. Now this completely becomes in one element of this array, and therefore there are 4 elements within this array here, and hence again they are being separated by a comma, and collectively they are become array of an arrays. Therefore we have grouped them in one more curly bracket here, and finally we have given the semicolon here. Now the rest of the program is very similar. Now as I mentioned to you that this segment is basically for formatting the numbers and displaying them properly on the console. Like this numbers contain the whole segment or whole number plus the decimal part or the fractional part, and also contain the dot here. So therefore we have used these iOS flags. Now let me run this program, and you will see you will get the same output, but we are not taking the value from the user because we have initialized our array at the moment we have defined the array here. So district 1 and then 2, 3 and 4. That means we have this array of 4 here, and every single array contains one more array having the size of 3 elements here. So first string contains 3 elements, second string contains 3 elements. So this is how we basically define and initialize a multi-dimensional array at the same time. Now the next concept is passing array to a function, right? So it's also very possible that we can give array as an argument to a function, right? So we know about the functions and we know about the arguments. We also know about the arrays, both one dimension and multi dimensions. Now it is a time to give array as an argument to a function, right? So there is an example on page number 274 of the textbook. Let me explain and demonstrate you this program to support the concept of passing array to a function. Now this program basically demonstrates the concept of giving array as an argument to a function, right? So on the very top we have the libraries, and then we have a manipulator here, and then we have using namespace std. Right here we have defined the two constant variables, district and month, and we have also initialized them, and then we have a declaration of a function, and the name of the function is display here. So as you know, the declaration must contain what it will return. So this display function will not return any value, therefore it is void here, and it also must contain arguments. So the first thing in argument we have to give is the data type, so which is double here, and then the arguments, which are basically the arrays here. So district is also an array, and month is also an array here, right? So these both are given as an argument here. Now in the main program, if you see here, we have defined the array, and we have also initialized the array, and then we have called the function, which is the display here, and given the argument, which is the name of the array. So sales is basically the name of the array, which we have given as an argument, right? And its sub arrays, which are district and months, are basically given as an argument in our declaration here, right? And this program right here is basically the definition of this function which we have declared on the top right here, right? So this function basically contains that segment of our earlier programs, which are basically helping us in displaying the values, these values on the output side, right? So the interesting part in this program is this function call. So whenever you call a function and you give an argument as an array, then all you need to do is you need to write the name of the array as an argument, right? That's all you have to do. So whenever you call a function and give an argument as an array, then you only need to write the name of the array here, right? And in function declaration, you need to mention the size of the array here. So size of the array for district is 4 and for months is 3. So all we need to do is mention the size of the array here, right? And then this program right here, which is the definition of this function, is basically the same stuff which I have explained to you in the earlier programs of this same program of the sale here. So in this segment right here only performs the manipulation on our floating point numbers and displays them on the output side. Now let me run this program here, and if you see, the output is very similar to earlier programs. That means there are different approaches to do the same thing, right? So the basic concept right here is use array as an argument to a function, and whenever you call a function and give argument as an array, then you need to only write the name of the array. That's what you have to do. And in the function declaration, you need to provide the dimension of the array. So suppose if you have 2 dimensions array, then you write 2 dimensions and their respective indexes as well. I mean indices as well. So the plural become indices. So you write the indices as well. So the main segment, as I mentioned to you, the main segment, whenever you call a function and give argument as an array, then the first thing is a declaration, right? So you need to be very clear in the declaration, and the declaration must contain the dimensions of the array here. So if it's a one-dimensional array, then you need to write one dimension here and the index of the array, right? So suppose if the size of the array is 4 or 5, and that's all you will mention here, right? And if there's a multi-dimensional array, then you write all the dimensions, and plus you provide their length and how many data elements will be there. So suppose district contain the 4 elements, so district will be 4, and months contain 3, so months will be 3. Now keep one thing in mind, that this array which is sales is of double in nature. Therefore the data type in the function declaration will definitely be double here, right? And there is interesting way to declare a function of a multi-dimension, which is that in function declaration you only provide the length of the second dimension, but do not provide the length of the first dimension here, right? So in a multi-dimensional array, we basically have an array of arrays, right? So you basically provide how many elements are there in the second array, right? But you do not provide the length of the first dimension here. Now the question is, what is the reason behind not providing the size of the first array here, and but providing the size of second array here? Now this question I will leave it to you, and let's see how many of you can answer this thing. And let me put this question again, right? So the one way to declare a multi-dimensional array is this way, that you provide the length of both the dimensions, right? So if you see district has the length of 4, that means district will definitely be containing maximum 4 elements, and the months will have 3 elements, right? So the month equal to 3, that means months will be equivalent to 3 here. Now every single district will be of 3 months, and 4 district, and every single district will have 3 months here. So the one way to declare to provide the declaration of a function is when you give argument as a array here, is to provide the both lengths of an array, right? And the second technique is that you provide the second length, but you do not provide the first length here. And the question is, what is the reason behind this thing, right? So I will leave this thing to you, and let's see how many of you can easily understand this thing and respond to me. Now whenever you call a function with an array as an argument, so all you need to do is you need to write the name of the array in the argument, right? So if you see in the program right here, we have called this function display, which basically helps us in displaying these numbers properly on the console, right? And performs the formatting by using the iOS calls, and iOS classes, and plus it also performs the formatting of this fractional point numbers and decimal numbers here. And for that reason we have used this function here. And whenever you call this function, you need to give argument which is the name of the array, and that's all you have to do. So write the declaration properly, and plus the function call properly, then your program is all set to work, and that's all you have to do. Now the next idea is array of structures, right? Now what we have done so far is we have used the built-in data types for the array, like integers and float. Now it is also very possible that the type of the array can be a user-defined data type. So when the user-defined data types are being used, then generally we use the structures, right? So array can contain structures as well as simple data types. Both things are possible, right? Now to demonstrate you this thing, the array of structures, there is a program on page number 277. Let me explain to you the program. Now this program right here basically demonstrates you the concept of array of structures. That means the array will not be of the built-in data type nature, but the array will be of user-defined data type in nature, right? So right here on the top we have libraries here, and then we have a variable size which is constant in nature of integer type, and it is being initialized to the value of 4 here, right? That means wherever size is being used, the value would be 4 there. Then we have a structure with the name part here, and we have been using the structure for long now, and this structure basically contains 3 variables. one variable is the model number, then we have part number and cost number, and every single variable is of different data type. So one variable is of integer nature, this is also of integer nature, and this variable is of float in nature. Right? Now in the main program body we have defined this variable n, which is not being initialized at the moment, but it will be used in our loop. And then right here is very interesting thing, which is the main part of our program. Right? So if you see right here, we have an array here, and the name of the array is apart. Right? So this is the name of the array apart, and whenever you define an array, we need to give the size of the array, I mean the index of the array. So the size is equal into 4, that means this index is 4 here. That simply means this array will be holding 4 elements, right? And this array is not of built-in data type like integer or float here, but if you see interestingly, the name of the class, I mean the name of the structure is being used, and the name of the structure is part, so therefore this part is being used here, and this part will be acting like a user defined data type here. So as I mentioned to you, that the structures are basically the way to create the variables or the arrays of user defined data types. Right? Now if you see this array apart, which has the size of 4, that means there are maximum 4 elements within this array, and this array is of part here. That means the data type for this array is part, which is the user defined data type. Now we have used this for loop here. So for loop of course needs the variable, so we have defined the variable on the top here. So n is equal to 0 and n less than size, and size is 4, that means we'll go till 3. So from 0 to 3, that means 4. And we have used the statement cout indel to leave one empty line there, or to start from a new line, I would say. And then first we'll enter a model number, and this model number will be stored in this model number by the help of this syntax. Right? So initially we write the name of the array, which is apart, and then we want to access the first element. Right? So the first element of course will be at 0 location, so initially the n is 0, hence apart 0 dot model number, and then apart 0 part number, and apart 0 cost, and then the n will be 1. That means these are information that we'll take from the user will be stored at the first location in the array, and then the n will be 2. That means all the information that we'll take from the user will be stored at the second location, and then finally all the information that we'll take from the user will be stored at the third location. So n is initially 0, then n would become 1, and then n become 2, and then n become 3. Right? So this goes on, so on and so forth. Likewise, we want to display this information on the output side. So initially n is 0, so whatever values are being stored at the 0 location will be displayed on the output side. Then n will become 1, so the values stored at first location of the array will be displayed on the output side. Then the values stored at the second location, I mean the second index, will be displayed, and then finally the third index. Now let me run this program. Right, so it asks me to enter a model number. So the model number, let's say 4554, and it asks me to enter part number, which is of course is a number. So I would say 78 and 87, or maybe 78, and it asks me to enter a cost. So cost is say 6500. Okay. Now this all information that I have entered will be stored at 0 location in the array, because initially the value of n is 0. That means all this information that I have entered will be stored at the 0 location in the array. Now let me enter the information for the first location. So let's say the part number is 9800, and the part number is 0098, and the cost is 9809. Okay. Now this information that I have entered will be stored at the first location in the array. Now this information that I am entering now will be stored at second location in the array, right? So see, part number is 6700, and say the 7600 and 6767, and finally this information that I am entering now will be stored at 0, 1, 2 and third location in the array. So let's say 4500, 5400, and 45 and 54, and these are all the random numbers, right? So you can enter any value because they are both integer and float here. So model number basically indicates model number of a vehicle, right? So model number of vehicle must contain characters and numbers in Pakistani, you see. And part number basically defines which year it was developed and what is the cost of your vehicle. So suppose if you have 4 vehicles at your home or 5 vehicles, then you need to define what is the model number of your car, what is the part number of your car, and what is the cost of your car, right, of your vehicle, I mean. So this is how we basically display this information or take the information from the user. Now right here, this segment which is on the output side, if you see on the console, is being done by this segment here. So initially n is 0, so this is also 0 and this is also 0. So all the values which are stored at 0 location will be displayed on the output side, and then 1 and then 2 and then 3. And this is how basically we use structures to store or to be used for the arrays. Now keep one thing in mind, that this structure is basically providing the data type to our array. That's all it is doing, and by doing so we can store the multiple information at a single location in an array, right? So array is basically a group of data elements, right, and every single element can contain more than one information, right, by the help of structures, right? So if the data type of an array is a structure, then every single element in an array can contain more than one information, right? And this is why we use structures in the concepts of array. This illustration basically explains the same concept which I have just explained to you, that we basically use structure and array combination only when a single element in an array is holding more than one information. So if you see right here, a part 2, that means third element in the array. So this is the first element, a second element, and third element in the array, which is at second location in the array, is containing this information. So generally, when you use a built-in data type, then every single element in the array will have only one information. But if you want to have more than one information at every single location, then you use or you deploy the concept of structures, right? So if you see right here, because the array starts from 0, so this is the 0 element in the array, this is the first element in the array, second element in the array, and third element in the array. So right here, if you see the second element of the array containing this information, right? So there are 3 different informations are being placed within the single element of an array here, and this is how we use the combination of structures and plus the concept of array here. In the next video, we'll talk about the different concepts which are being used in arrays, such as we talk about the classes and objects and different programs of this chapter. So I'll cover the rest of the concepts in our next video. And if you have any question regarding this video lecture, then you may please ask me in WhatsApp group or on email, or maybe on DLE, whatever you prefer. And meanwhile, you may practice the exercise questions of the topics which we have covered in this video, right? And thank you so much. Have a good time. Take care. Allah Hafiz.